Welcome back to Around the Table with Stacy Smith as we talk about the local scene as far as politics go. There is a debate tonight on KDKA-TV featuring the two county executive candidates, one Republican, one Democrat. Joe Rocky started airing his TV ads shortly after Labor Day, and soon thereafter, a group that supports Rocky also began airing some ads in support of him. To my knowledge, Sarah Innamorato has yet to hit the airwaves, but this is not a surprise. In the primary, she waited and then came on very strong with ads later in the campaign, and it would appear this is her game plan once again. So, Jim, is this a winning strategy for a general election?
Well, again, this is a Democratic county, and we're going to touch on some things that the professor mentioned in the last segment, I'm sure, which I think we need to discuss. But let's talk about the metric of the county. It is a heavily Democratic area. And so, being where she is and being where she was after the primary and moving into the general, I don't think that it's a damaging thing at this point that she hasn't been on television or on the airwaves. Now, I do believe we're going to see and hear more of her in that regard after tonight and as we move forward. The Democrats, in addition to her more of a rollout and being on social media and on television and airwaves, also need to talk about what their field plan is moving into November. And so, yes, it's important to get on the airwaves, but as we always say in the business, signs don't vote, commercials don't vote. You still need to have a good retail game plan door to door. The progressives already know who their supporters are. They've won with them successfully for the last 10 years. This is the first time, I would posit, however, that they're going up one-on-one in a November election with a well-funded opponent on the other side. Their playbook has yielded tremendous dividends for them in a primary situation where when you win in the primary, you win in November. That is not the playbook in this dynamic right now in November in Allegheny County. It's a different playbook. They need to translate some of the things that work for them in the spring, but they need to add game plans for the situation they're facing now.
I agree with Jim, and the fact that Sarah won in a 5-person race, there were a lot of people that didn't vote for her. They voted for somebody else. Where do they go in this general election when it's one-on-one? And then now we're going to be talking about independents who didn't get a chance to vote in the primary. Where do they go? If they were people of the Progressive Party, they would have gone over and registered to get into the Progressive Party, to get in to have that opportunity to vote for her. So I think her challenge is how does she dent the independent vote? And then for Rocky, he's got to get the independent vote, but he has to get people enthused to go out and vote. A lot of people out there say, well, it's a Democratic county, Democrat's going to win, and a Republican can't win. I'm proof that a Republican can win. He can win, and I think he would be the best candidate to do this.
All right. There's a lot that the Democrats have to do, and I'm not as close to the county party as I was when I chaired it, but my expectations are this is what they should be doing, what they should have done, and what they need to continue to do. It was, as the governor said, a divisive primary. Sarah won from the progressive wing. The professor is correct. Not all of that wing of the party, but a big chunk of it is an unforgiving chunk. You're with us or you're against us. I used to tell them at state committee, do not act like the Tea Party. But there is an element of the progressive wing that does behave that if it's not everything we want, we don't want to know you. Now, that wing of the Progressive Party, not all of it, but a chunk of it, also is unforgiving to those who they vanquish in the spring. Are the people who lost in the spring back in the fold? Yes or no? If not, why not? They need to be, and if they haven't been, they need to get back in as of yesterday. If you can't get them all, get as many as you can. Build a coalition within the party. How effective have you been up until now to fix and heal the divisiveness of that primary? Number one. Number two, now you have Republicans to look at. Now you have independents to look at. What is your messaging to targeted demographics in those two parties, the eyes and the party of the GOP? What have you done? And so you need to expand the dimension of your campaign and your message in a quantum fashion. So the messaging, have you unified sufficiently since May? And how are you messaging to bring in addition to the unification you hopefully have done by now, what's your messaging for those other elements, the I's and the R's, between now and November?
Keith,
well, polling doesn't tell everything, Stacy. I mean, I'm sure the polling is going to vote out the fact that that crime is the number one issue. I mean, all of us on this panel probably understand that there's a large concern of crime, but I think there's a certain misnomer there. And if I could speak directly to the Rocky folks, I would say absolutely lead with your endorsements for law enforcement. Talk about her politics of defunding the police. Talk about her insistence that she does not want to reopen a juvenile detention center. Yes, those issues are important, but in the 43 years I've been in this political vineyard, one thing seems evidently clear to me, election cycle after election cycle, and that is, in the end, people vote their pocketbook. And when I take my own polling among family and friends and neighbors and other suburbanites, when I'm talking about this race, that this matchup that we're staring down in less than 45 days, when we talk about reassessing the economy at this time, when inflation concerns are out there, and when two family incomes aren't saving any money and money is tight, their fear of a tax increase, and one that has been absolutely promised by the Democratic opponent, that her plan is within the first 60 days call for a reassessment of property taxes, that hits home. That's how you build that 25% bleed on the Democratic vote to swing Republican. And I hope they hit hard on that issue in the next 4 or 5 weeks.
Joseph.
Yeah, there's still some regular Democrats who are disgruntled after the primary. And, it may seem like a small thing, but on election night, Sarah Inamorato's supporters were graceless in victory. And I can't tell you how often I've heard that from regular Democrats whose candidate lost in that primary, that they just felt that there's no way they could ever swing back towards the victor after the way the victor supporters behaved on election night. Again, it's all about people. It's all about human relationships, and it's about being kind.
What happens in that situation, Joe, is that they don't necessarily vote for the Republican candidate, but they'll sit on their hands and not go?
Well, unless in this case they find the Republican candidate to be acceptable. I mean, this is a kid from the North Side, who happened to make it good and who happens to be a Republican. So there may be a more attractive alternative here than just sitting out.
And there's another alternative out there. And he came in second, and that's John Weinstein. What's he doing? He could have influence on how this election goes. And if he influences his vote to go with Rocky, that's a big step. We'll see what happens.
Yes.
Right, go ahead.
Stacey, I agree with the professor. It was a very awkward room that night. I was there, and quite frankly, and anybody that was there would agree with me, the person that was being the most divisive at the microphone was Mayor Gainey. I heard it. It just wasn't it was not how you behave, in my opinion, when you're on the side of victory. It reminds me that divisiveness can cost a front runner. Divisiveness can cost a front runner. Ask Michael DeWita and Colleen Vilono back in 1995 about some of the divisive things in Mr. DeWita's rhetoric that I think significantly contributed to Larry Dunn and Bob Cramner winning the courthouse for the first time since the 1930s. There were statements made by them, in my opinion, at that time that led certain participants in the county Democratic Party to think that they weren't needed. If that is going on now, where there are moderates and others in the Democratic Party who are given a perception that their votes don't matter, or that the progressive wing thinks they can win without them, you need to get that perception in order if it's out there, and you need to get it in order fast.
All right, we have to take a break. That's something we're going to continue to watch as we approach Election Day. We'll be back in just a moment.